The manager humiliated the newcomer, and was shocked to discover he was the millionaire owner of the company. With an elegant appearance and a calm demeanor, Alexander was the type who spoke little but observed a lot. At 42 years old, his career as a businessman was marked by a series of successful acquisitions, but few knew the details of his personal life. The newspapers in Velmor described him as its mysterious magnate, a man whose presence was only noticed through the changes he brought. His interest in purchasing Horizon Systems was sparked by the promise of innovation the company represented. He saw potential in its development teams and in the product portfolio that could be refined. However, his goal in acquiring the company went beyond the numbers. Alexander believed that financial statements and annual reports were only part of the story. To him, the true value of a company lay in the people who made it up, those who worked tirelessly to make it better, even when no one was watching. Horizon Systems, the company Alexander acquired, was known for its expertise in developing corporate software and digital solutions. With about 200 employees, the company maintained a solid structure but struggled to stand out in an increasingly competitive market. Its location in the heart of Velmor's financial district made it a strategic point, with its large windows offering breathtaking views of the bustling Harborview Avenue. Internally, however, Horizon faced challenges. The work environment was marked by rigid hierarchies and a competitive atmosphere that undermined team spirit. The hallways were quiet, with furtive glances and whispered conversations in the corners of the rooms. Each employee seemed more concerned with securing their position than with collaborating for the company's growth. When the purchase of Horizon was finalized, rumors spread through the corridors. Who would the new owner be? A cold and calculating investor? A visionary in search of technological revolutions? Alexander, however, had a different plan. Instead of arriving with abrupt changes and grand announcements, he decided to get to know the company in a more subtle way. Inspired by stories of leaders who had taken this approach before, he prepared to spend a day among the employees, without revealing his identity. He believed that the only way to identify someone's true potential was by observing them without the barriers of prejudice. If he arrived as the new boss, the masks would quickly come up. But as a new employee looking for an opportunity, he could see the employees' daily lives and the essence of the company. In the days leading up to his arrival, Alexander spent hours reviewing Horizon's reports, studying the names of team leaders, key roles, and identifying strengths and weaknesses. To the employees, he was just another name that appeared in corporate emails and hallway rumors. But to him, each future interaction would be a piece of the puzzle he intended to assemble. The coming days would be ones of close observation. At that moment, in one of the highest offices in the city, he looked out the window of his luxurious apartment, contemplating the lights of Velmor. A slight smile crossed his face as he thought about the change he intended to implement, a change that would begin quietly but echo for a long time through the hallways of Horizon Systems. Starting tomorrow, Alexander would no longer be the mysterious magnate. He would be just Alex, a newcomer with sharp eyes and ears ready to absorb every detail of the new work environment. And with that, his journey to discover the true value of Horizon would begin. The morning after the purchase of Horizon Systems, Alexander Reed traded his designer suit for simple clothes, worn-out jeans, a basic t-shirt, and an old jacket. His leather shoes were replaced by a pair of well-worn sneakers. He looked at himself in the mirror of his luxurious apartment, located in one of the most elegant buildings in Velmor. It was a new character he saw reflected there. This was no longer the Alexander Reed that the Velmor newspapers called the mysterious magnate. Now he was just Alex, a newcomer looking for a chance. As he rode down the elevator of his building, his mind turned to the steps ahead. The plan was simple but risky. He would need to immerse himself in the daily life of the company and closely understand the dynamics that shaped Horizon. He knew he couldn't afford to lose focus. Every interaction would matter, every conversation could reveal a piece of the puzzle he needed to assemble to understand what was really happening behind the scenes. The Horizon Systems building, with its glass facade and modern lines, contrasted with the simplicity of Alex's disguise. The lobby was bustling with life, with employees hurrying back and forth, while the reception, managed by an overwhelmed young woman, handled incessant phone calls. Alexander noticed that, for many, that space was just a point of passage, a place where the frenetic pace left little room to notice the people around them. When Alex reached the reception, the young woman, whom he would later come to know as Julia, gave him a brief glance before returning to her tasks. With a quick murmur, she indicated that he should wait for instructions, without even lifting her head to look at him. He observed Julia as he waited, noticing how she quickly typed on the computer, shifting her focus to address each new demand. Even without yet knowing her story, he realized she dealt with more than her role demanded, but she wasn't seen beyond her position as a receptionist. While he waited, Alexander noticed a group of employees gathering for a quick coffee near the reception. Amidst subdued laughter and comments about changes within the company, he realized that many were concerned about the arrival of the new owner. The tension was palpable, mixed with anxiety over possible restructurings. With his visitor badge hanging around his neck, Alex walked through the corridors of Horizon, absorbing every detail. Right away, he noticed that power dynamics were evident everywhere. Employees moved quickly, some murmuring forced greetings while others completely ignored him. It was during one of these moments that he met Carter for the first time. Carter, a middle-aged supervisor, was always surrounded by an aura of authority. Alexander had read about him in the reports, a man who kept the goals on track but frequently received negative feedback from his subordinates about his attitude. Carter walked past Alex, giving him a bored look before commenting to a colleague. "Looks like we're hiring just about anyone now, huh?" he said, in a tone that was meant to be overheard. "Another newbie, here for what, 2 weeks?" The colleague laughed, not realizing that Alexander was just a few feet away, listening to every word. Alexander kept silent but took note of that first interaction as a reflection of what was yet to come. For many at Horizon, hierarchical position was a barrier that prevented any genuine connection. Throughout the day, Alex sought to understand more about the work environment. He made his way to the break room, where he found a few employees taking a quick pause. The atmosphere was a mix of discreet laughter and tense conversations about tight deadlines. In one corner, a young intern struggled to organize documents that were scattered across the table, while an impatient manager, more concerned with maintaining his rigid posture, completely ignored the intern's requests for help. "I need these reports ready by the end of the day." "That's not negotiable," said the manager, without even glancing at the young woman who was trying to balance the papers in her arms. The scene left Alexander with a bitter feeling. The company he had acquired was, indeed, a place where pressure and indifference seemed to speak louder than teamwork. As the afternoon wore on, Alex found himself helping the young intern pick up the documents that had fallen to the floor. She looked at him in surprise, thanking him with a shy smile. "Thank you. It's tough here sometimes," she said, not realizing that she was revealing more than she intended. Alexander just smiled back, without revealing anything about himself, but feeling that his decision to closely observe every detail of Horizon was the right one. It was in moments like these that he saw the challenges he would face in changing the company's culture. At the end of his first day as Alex, Alexander returned to the modest space he had been assigned, a cubicle with a view of the surrounding offices. He observed the tired faces leaving the building at the end of the day, each with their own concerns and expectations. For many, it was just another day in a place where their voices went unheard. But Alexander knew that for him, this day was the beginning of something much bigger. As he looked at the now empty hallways, he reflected on the untold stories he had begun to uncover. Julia, the receptionist struggling to be seen beyond the front desk. Carter, the supervisor more focused on maintaining a facade of power than leading his team with empathy. The young intern, overworked and ignored by those who should have been guiding her. Alexander felt that his role at Horizon would be challenging, but he also saw the potential for change. There was a complexity in the company's culture that he needed to unravel. If there was a way to transform Horizon into a better place, it would be by listening to these stories, seeing beyond appearances, and offering opportunities for each person's true potential to emerge. The day was ending, but for Alexander, the journey was just beginning. The challenge of changing Horizon's culture from the inside out motivated him, and he knew he would need patience and attention to earn the trust of those who, until then, only saw him as a mere newcomer. The story of Alex, and how he would become the agent of change, was starting to take shape in every detail he absorbed in the corridors of Horizon Systems. In the days following his arrival disguised as Alex, Alexander explored every corner of Horizon Systems, absorbing the subtleties of interactions and behaviors that shaped the company. More than ever, he felt the tension among the employees and the toxic dynamics that hovered over each department. It was in this context that the names of Carter and Melinda began to stand out as symbols of what needed to change. Carter was a man who made sure to keep his position of authority clear. With his neatly combed gray hair and an always impeccable suit, he walked through the hallways like a guardian of the rules, but his leadership style left much to be desired. Carter's team, made up mostly of young, newly hired analysts, lived under constant pressure. He had a peculiar talent for turning small mistakes into major public lessons. In one of these instances, Alexander witnessed Carter reprimand Lucas, a 24-year-old analyst who was still adjusting to the company's pace. The incident occurred right in the middle of a conference room, where Lucas was trying to present the results of a report he had stayed up all night preparing. "And you think this is acceptable?" Carter interrupted, not giving Lucas a chance to finish his presentation. "If I wanted mediocre work, I would have hired someone for half your salary, Lucas." Lucas's face turned red with shame. He tried to explain, showing that the numbers were still within the acceptable margin of error, but Carter wouldn't listen. Instead, he turned to the other analysts in the room. "This, gentlemen, is what happens when you entrust an important task to someone who isn't prepared. Let this be a lesson for all of you." Alexander, watching the scene while disguised as a silent participant in the meeting, felt his indignation grow. Carter's public humiliation didn't just destroy Lucas's confidence, it also created a climate of fear among the others. To Carter, leadership seemed synonymous with control, and he believed that the best way to keep the team together was through fear. After the meeting, Alexander found Lucas alone in the break room, trying to mask his frustration while he sipped his coffee. "Don't let him get to you, Lucas. Everyone makes mistakes," Alex said in an encouraging tone, trying to offer some comfort to the young analyst. Lucas looked at him with a mix of surprise and gratitude. He hadn't expected words of support from a newcomer, and the simple gesture of empathy from Alex was enough to bring a shy smile to his face. "Thanks, Alex. I just wish I don't know, understood that we're trying." Lucas sighed, taking another sip of his coffee. "But it seems that, to some people, we'll always just be another number, right?" Alexander nodded silently, but that interaction made him realize how much Carter contributed to creating an environment where fear stifled any attempt at innovation. While Carter used fear as his main tool, Melinda, the administrative staff member, acted more subtly but was just as corrosive. She was known for her haughty demeanor and for always being surrounded by colleagues who, out of convenience, listened to her. Melinda had a particular knack for masking her venom with a friendly tone, but those who paid attention could sense the malice in her words. One day, while Alex was in the break room preparing his afternoon coffee, Melinda walked in, accompanied by a small group of employees who seemed eager to stay in her good graces. They were discussing recent changes in the company, especially the arrival of the new owner, whom no one had yet seen in person. "You heard that the new owner is one of those magnates who likes to play philanthropist?" Melinda remarked with a sly smile. "I bet he doesn't even know the difference between a financial report and an Excel spreadsheet. He just knows how to look at numbers and give orders, like all the others." The others laughed, following Melinda's ironic tone. Alexander, trying to stay out of the conversation, couldn't help but feel irritated by the superficiality of those words. Melinda was a perfect example of how some people at Horizon were more concerned with maintaining their sense of superiority than with contributing to the work environment. Later, while Alex was organizing some cables in the IT room, Melinda found him alone and took the opportunity to make a snide remark. Her voice was sweet, but laced with a subtle venom. "You know, Alex, some people think they can just come in here and achieve everything with a little effort, but reality is different." She cast a disdainful look at the tangled cables he was trying to fix. "I guess you know what I'm talking about, right? It's a tough world for those who don't have the right connections." Alexander kept a neutral expression, but inside, Melinda's words echoed as a constant reminder of how superior she saw herself to others. He knew that the presence of people like Melinda was one of the reasons why many employees felt demotivated. Back at his workspace, Alexander reflected on the interactions he had witnessed and experienced so far. Carter and Melinda were like two sides of the same coin, both contributing to the culture of demotivation and fear that dominated Horizon. Alexander knew that real change could only happen if he could see beyond appearances and find a way to neutralize their toxic influences. For now, he decided to keep his identity a secret and continue to observe. He needed to better understand how Carter and Melinda affected other employees, but he also wanted to find out if there was any trace of empathy in them or if their behavior was truly irredeemable. The pieces of the puzzle were starting to come together, but he knew there were still many details to understand the complete picture. Each interaction reinforced Alexander's belief that the true strength of a company lay in the untold stories of its employees, and that to transform Horizon, he needed to start from the roots, without allowing the weeds to suffocate the talents that existed there. Alex's journey continued, and he knew there would be many challenges ahead before finding the best way to restructure Horizon systems and, perhaps, reach the hearts of those most in need of change. As the days passed, Alexander, still in the role of Alex, began to realize that Horizon Systems wasn't just made up of figures like Carter and Melinda. There were also those who, despite not holding high positions, contributed to the company with genuine dedication, bringing light amid the tense environment. Among these employees, two names began to stand out: Julia, the receptionist, and Marcus, the IT technician. Julia, 28 years old, was a familiar face at Horizon's reception. Her warm smile was a stark contrast to the coldness that dominated the atmosphere. But over time, Alexander realized there was much more behind the friendly smile she offered to everyone who passed by reception. During the breaks, when the lobby was less busy, Alex would take the opportunity to get to know Julia a little better. One afternoon, while the lobby was quieter, Julia confided some of her frustrations to Alex as she organized the day's paperwork. "You know, Alex, I graduated in business administration a few years ago, and I started here at reception because it was the only position available at the time. I thought that, after a while, I'd get the chance to move up, maybe to HR or project management." She paused, sighing. "But here I am, still at reception." She looked at the badge she wore, with her name and title clearly visible, and a mix of hope and disappointment crossed her face. Alexander, observing silently, noticed the glimmer in Julia's eyes, which indicated a desire for something greater, something that seemed beyond her reach at that moment. "And what keeps you going, Julia?" Alex asked, curious to understand her motivation in a place that didn't recognize her as she deserved. Julia gave a sad smile before replying, "I guess I believe that one day, someone will realize that I can do more. And until that happens, I try to be helpful wherever I can. I like to assist the employees, to make the environment a little lighter. I know it's not much, but I think it's my way of contributing." Alexander sensed that Julia carried a rare idealism, something he didn't expect to find in a company so marked by competition. She was someone who, even in difficult times, sought to see a greater purpose. At the same time, he knew that this hope, if left unfulfilled, could turn into discouragement. Marcus, on the other hand, was a 35-year-old man who stood out for his technical expertise and his willingness to help colleagues. Alexander found Marcus in one of the hallways on the IT floor, kneeling beside a server that was having issues. It was late, most of the employees had already left, but Marcus was still there, trying to fix the problem that could cause headaches the next day. "Still here, Marcus?" asked Alex, in a friendly tone as he approached. Marcus stood up, wiping his hands on an old rag he kept in his pocket. "Someone's got to make sure everything's running smoothly tomorrow morning, right?" he replied with a tired smile. "I don't mind staying a bit late, as long as no one has to deal with this first thing in the morning." The two sat down in a small break area nearby, where the coffee machines buzzed while Marcus grabbed a black coffee to keep his eyes open. Alexander took the opportunity to learn a little more about the technician who, until then, he had only seen as someone always behind the scenes. "And you, Marcus, have you ever thought about taking on a leadership role around here?" Alex asked with genuine interest. Marcus let out a short laugh, without bitterness, but with a touch of resignation. "Oh, Alex, I love what I do, but I think some people are never seen as leaders, you know? The team needs someone to fix the technical problems, someone who's content to stay behind the scenes, and that someone is me." He took a sip of his coffee before continuing. "But to be honest, it gets tiring sometimes, you know? You help, you make things work, and at the end of the day, no one knows you stayed late to prevent the system from crashing." There was something in Marcus's voice that touched Alexander. He saw in him an untapped talent, a desire to contribute beyond his duties. And, above all, he saw an accumulated frustration, the same that many employees felt there, but didn't have the courage to express. "What keeps you here then?" Alex asked, knowing that the answer might reveal a lot about what drove Marcus. "I guess I like to believe that, somewhere, things can get better, you know? That if we do our part, maybe someday someone will realize how important this is. It might be naive, but it's what keeps me going." Marcus shrugged, and Alexander saw a glimmer of determination in his eyes, even amidst the resignation. These interactions with Julia and Marcus deeply touched Alexander. He saw in them potential that wasn't being tapped, and that in many places would have been stifled by a toxic environment. Julia, with her kindness and desire to grow, and Marcus, with his competence and selflessness, were clear examples that Horizon had a human richness that remained hidden to many. Alexander found himself thinking about Julia, who spent nights studying in the hope of a promotion that never came, and about Marcus, who sacrificed his personal time to ensure the company ran smoothly. He knew that if Horizon continued to overlook people like them, it would miss an opportunity to grow in a real and sustainable way. Back at his modest workspace, Alexander reflected on what he had learned so far. Horizon Systems was a place full of challenges, but also of hope. People like Julia and Marcus were proof that, behind appearances, there were stories of dedication and resilience that deserved to be recognized. That evening, as he left the Horizon building, Alexander looked up at the illuminated windows of the company that was now his. To many, he was still just Alex, the newcomer. But he was beginning to feel a greater sense of responsibility toward the lives that depended on the firm. People like Julia and Marcus deserved to be seen, heard, and valued. And Alexander was determined to give them that opportunity, though he knew that there was still much to be done and discovered before that could happen. As the lights of Velmor lit up the streets below, Alexander smiled, thinking about the journey that lay ahead. He knew that the changes wouldn't happen overnight, but he was willing to fight so that talents like Julia's and Marcus's could finally shine. And maybe, in doing so, he would not only transform Horizon but also find a new purpose for himself. The atmosphere at Horizon Systems was especially tense that morning. A critical project, involving the implementation of a new digital security system for a major client, faced serious technical issues. The failure had emerged unexpectedly, disrupting the main server, and the delivery deadline was fast approaching. If the problem wasn't resolved quickly, it could mean a significant loss for the company and a blow to its reputation. Alexander, still disguised as Alex, noticed the unusual activity as soon as he entered the company. Employees gathered in groups, speaking in hushed tones about the server issues and the potential impact. The fear of failure was written on many faces, and the pressure for a solution grew with every passing minute. Marcus, the IT technician, was urgently called in to try to fix the damage. He arrived at the central server and began working intensively, typing commands as he analyzed lines of code that seemed like a tangled mess. Julia, who had learned of the problem from a conversation passing through reception, offered to help, taking on the responsibility of organizing information and managing the demands from supervisors seeking immediate updates. Julia positioned herself next to Marcus, coordinating calls from the higher-ups and filtering information requests coming in from all sides. Meanwhile, she watched Marcus sweating, his eyes fixed on the screen as he tried to locate the root of the issue. It was exhausting work, and both of them knew they were at their limit. "Don't worry, Marcus, I'll handle these calls. Focus on finding the solution. The last thing we need right now is distractions," Julia said, with a determined look, while she quickly typed messages on her computer. She felt the weight of responsibility on her shoulders. It was the first time she was at the center of such a big problem, and the tired look in Marcus's eyes reflected the effort they both were putting in to keep the situation under control. But the pressure didn't come solely from the technical issue. Carter, who usually acted like an authoritarian leader, was more irate than ever. He stormed into the tech room with firm steps, his expression full of frustration, and wasted no time trying to assert his presence. "This is unacceptable. How did you let it get to this point?" Carter bellowed, his voice echoing through the room. He cast a disdainful look at Marcus, as if expecting him to fix everything in an instant. "We have a client waiting, and you're still here, trying to fix what should have been resolved already." Marcus, struggling to maintain his composure, replied without taking his eyes off the screen. "We're working as fast as we can, Carter, but it's a complex problem. We just need a few more minutes to identify the root cause." "Minutes?" Carter scoffed, raising his voice even more. "Do you know how long the client has been left without an answer? This could cost the company dearly, and you too will be the ones to blame." Melinda, who was standing beside Carter, seemed to seize the opportunity to pile on the pressure. She crossed her arms and shot a look of superiority at Julia and Marcus. "You know, Julia, some people here seem to not understand the seriousness of what's at stake," Melinda said with a cold smile. "I hope you and your friend here are ready to face the consequences if this goes wrong." Melinda took the opportunity to take a jab at Alex, who was nearby, trying to help Marcus organize cables and equipment. "And you, Alex?" Melinda said with a fake, calculated smile. "Maybe you should be doing something else instead of getting in the way of those trying to save the day. Who knows, maybe you're the one responsible for this, with your lack of experience." "I bet Carter agrees with me." Carter nodded, taking Melinda's lead. "That's right, Alex. Rookies sometimes do more harm than good. If I were you, I'd stay out of this mess." Alexander, staying in character as Alex, swallowed hard and stepped back, pretending to accept the criticism. But inside, he felt the anger growing. He knew that Carter and Melinda were more interested in finding a scapegoat than in solving the problem. As he watched Julia and Marcus stay focused despite the provocations, Alexander decided it was time to act discreetly, ensuring their efforts wouldn't be in vain. Marcus was racing against time to find the system error, with lines of code flashing on the screen like a maze with no exit. Sweat dripped down Marcus's forehead, and Julia was beside him, jotting down every step, trying to assist however she could. Alexander, now observing from a corner of the room, realized that Marcus was close to identifying the issue but needed a push in the right direction. Taking advantage of a moment when Carter and Melinda left to discuss with the higher-ups, Alexander approached Marcus's desk without drawing attention from others. "Marcus, have you tried running the analysis script in reverse mode? The bug might be in one of the recent updates," Alex whispered, as if it were just a casual suggestion. Marcus, initially confused, looked at him with a mix of surprise and gratitude. "It's worth a try," he murmured, quickly implementing the suggestion. The code began to run, and the screen revealed an error that had previously gone unnoticed. It was a bug in one of the integration lines, something difficult to spot but easy to fix with the right guidance. Marcus and Julia exchanged relieved glances when the issue was finally resolved, and the system returned to normal parameters. "We did it!" Julia exclaimed, almost in disbelief, giving Marcus a light tap on the shoulder. They laughed with relief, while Alex stepped back, satisfied that he had helped without compromising his identity, allowing the credit to go to the two dedicated employees. When Carter and Melinda returned to the room, the system was already back to normal, and the project had been saved. Julia and Marcus maintained their professional demeanor, explaining that the issue had been identified and corrected. Carter, seeing that there was no longer any reason to complain, cast a suspicious glance at Alex but couldn't say anything in the face of Marcus and Julia's successful work. "Well, it's a good thing you managed to fix it. Let's just hope you handle it better next time," Melinda remarked, trying to soften her tone but still with a touch of bitterness. But Julia and Marcus, knowing they had faced the crisis with dignity and competence, ignored the remarks. They knew they had succeeded together, even without receiving full credit for their effort. Alexander left the Horizon building that night with a sense of accomplishment. He knew that throughout that day, he had witnessed a small example of the resilience of Julia and Marcus and how true leadership often came from the most unexpected places. He had also seen how quick Carter and Melinda were to find fault but slow to offer solutions. Although it wasn't yet time to reveal who he truly was, Alexander was more certain than ever that significant changes needed to be made, and that people like Julia and Marcus deserved a place of prominence in this new chapter of Horizon Systems. The confrontation with Carter and Melinda was just one of the many challenges that would arise, but it was also a confirmation that beneath the surface of competitiveness and power struggles, there was latent potential waiting for the right opportunity to flourish. And Alexander was ready to ensure that these opportunities would finally emerge. The sun was beginning to set over the city of Velmor, painting the horizon with shades of orange and purple, as the employees of Horizon Systems prepared to wrap up another workday. But unlike other nights, there was a sense of anticipation in the air. A message about a general meeting had been sent to everyone, calling them to an urgent gathering in the main conference room. It was rare for Horizon to hold general meetings like this, especially at such late hours. Curiosity and tension were evident on the faces of those heading to the conference room. Julia and Marcus, still recovering from the stress of the technical problem that had nearly compromised an important project, exchanged glances, trying to guess the reason for the meeting. Carter and Melinda, on the other hand, looked clearly uncomfortable, especially after the server incident, where they couldn't find a scapegoat to shield themselves from criticism. As the employees gathered, they murmured among themselves, forming theories about what was to come. Some believed the meeting was about restructuring, layoffs, or changes in leadership positions. Others thought that the new owner would finally reveal his intentions for Horizon after weeks of speculation. Is he finally going to show himself? An analyst whispered to Julia, who was beside him. They say he's one of those businessmen who like to meddle in everything. Julia just shrugged, trying to stay calm, but inside, she felt the same anxiety as the others. She still remembered how Carter and Melinda had tried to pin the blame for the technical problem on her and Marcus, and she hoped that any changes to come would be fair for everyone. Carter and Melinda, meanwhile, were visibly restless. Melinda kept adjusting her blazer, while Carter muttered something about rookies who don't know what they're doing. The possibility of losing the control they had over their teams made them even more tense. "What do you think this means?" Melinda asked, trying to keep her voice steady while looking at Carter. "I hope that rookie Alex didn't mess things up. After all, I don't trust people who come out of nowhere and think they know everything. They're probably looking for someone to blame for today's mess." "I hope the rookie is ready to take the fall," Carter replied with a sarcastic smile. All the employees gathered in the large conference room, which was rarely so full. The tension in the air was palpable. Alexander arrived last, still dressed in the simple clothes of Alex, but his demeanor was different. He walked with confidence, and his gaze scanned every face in the room, analyzing the reactions. He knew that what would happen next would change everything. "Good evening, everyone. First of all, I want to thank you all for coming on such short notice," Alexander began, with a calm but serious tone. "Many of you know me as Alex, the new guy who joined a few weeks ago." The murmuring in the room was immediate. Some employees exchanged confused glances. Julia and Marcus looked at each other, trying to understand the reason behind the speech. Carter and Melinda, however, furrowed their brows, annoyed at the idea that Alex might be the center of attention. Alexander paused, observing the reactions, and then, in a calculated move, he took a badge with his real name out of his pocket and pinned it to his shirt. The simple gesture was enough to silence the room. "What you don't know yet is that my real name is Alexander Reed." He paused, letting the words echo. "And I am the new owner of Horizon Systems." Silence filled the room for a few seconds, followed by a murmur of surprise. It was as if the information took time to be processed by everyone present. Julia put her hand to her mouth, trying to hide her shock. Marcus widened his eyes, while some of the younger analysts seemed to struggle to grasp what they had just heard. Carter and Melinda, however, felt the impact the most. Carter tried to maintain his composure but couldn't hide the flush that spread across his face. His gaze fixed on Alexander, his mind racing through the many times he had dismissed or ignored him, thinking he was just another unimportant newbie. Melinda, for her part, seemed to choke on her words, unable to formulate a response. Their shock was evident, and the humiliation palpable. Alexander seized the moment to continue, now with a firmness that made it clear that this was no longer the humble Alex everyone had overlooked. "Over the past few weeks, I've been observing each of you," Alexander continued, his voice resonating through the room. "I wanted to understand the essence of this company and get to know the people who truly make a difference here. And I must say, I found both strengths and deep issues that need to be addressed." He paused, his eyes scanning every face in the room, but especially focusing on Carter and Melinda, who averted their eyes, ashamed. "Some people here have shown a willingness to humiliate and trample others to maintain their positions. Carter, Melinda, your actions are a reflection of the kind of leadership I will not tolerate. At Horizon, from now on, there will be no room for those who put their own ego above the team." Carter attempted to stammer out a defense, but Alexander raised his hand, firmly cutting him off. "Your practices have harmed the work environment and hindered the growth of the true talents in this company. Both of you are being dismissed immediately. Please gather your belongings and leave Horizon today." The look of shock and humiliation on Carter's face was evident, while Melinda, with tear-filled eyes, tried to maintain a facade of superiority but failed. Under the watchful eyes of the other employees, they left the room, carrying the heavy awareness that their behavior had finally reached its limit. After Carter and Melinda's departure, Alexander turned his attention to Julia and Marcus, who still appeared stunned by the events. "I've also seen people who work tirelessly even without receiving the recognition they deserve," said Alexander, now in a softer tone. "Julia, Marcus, you have shown courage, competence, and, above all, genuine dedication to improving Horizon. I want to thank you for your work and announce that, starting today, you are both being promoted. Julia, you will take on a leadership role in administration, with opportunities for growth. And Marcus, your experience and technical skills will be crucial in reshaping our IT team." Julia could hardly believe Alexander's words. Her eyes welled up with tears, and she tried to steady her trembling hands as she thanked him, while Marcus managed a smile of relief and gratitude. "I have always believed that the true value of a company lies in the people who make it up," Alexander concluded, looking around at everyone in the room. "And that's what we're going to build here. A new Horizon Systems, where talent, effort, and respect are rewarded. Today marks the beginning of a new era for all of us." The conference room was filled with a reflective silence, followed by a tentative round of applause that gradually grew stronger. The employees felt that real change was on the horizon, and Alexander, observing the hopeful faces before him, knew that he was on the right path. After the meeting, as the employees left the room still discussing the changes, Alexander stayed behind, contemplating the space that now represented a new challenge. He knew that the transformation would be long and would require effort, but he was ready to lead Horizon towards a better future. The revelation of his true identity was just the first step of a larger plan aimed at restoring respect and collaboration within the company. Julia and Marcus approached, still emotional, and Alexander shook their hands firmly, making it clear that he saw them not just as employees but as allies in this journey of renewal. Horizon Systems had a new owner, a new direction, and, above all, a new purpose: to value human potential, not just the numbers. For Alexander, this was the true mission, and he was ready to fulfill it, knowing that the future of Horizon as well as that of Velmor depended on the choices he made from that moment on. The days that followed Alexander Reed's big reveal marked the beginning of a profound transformation at Horizon Systems. The impact of the changes began to be felt in every department of the company, from the reception to the boardroom meetings that had previously been dominated by tension and rigid hierarchies. The atmosphere of distrust and competition gave way to an environment of collaboration and renewed hope. Under Alexander's leadership, Horizon left behind the shadows of a toxic past and embraced a new philosophy of respect and appreciation for talent. Alexander knew that for change to be genuine, it needed to start with listening. In the early days, he organized a series of meetings with small teams, bringing together everyone from the newest analysts to the longtime managers. Each meeting was an opportunity for employees to share their concerns, suggestions, and ideas for improving the company. "No one is better than you to help us understand what Horizon needs to grow," Alexander would say in these meetings, always attentive to the reactions of those present. "I want to hear your suggestions and work alongside each of you to build an environment where everyone feels valued." Julia, now in her new role in administration, was responsible for organizing these meetings and ensuring that every voice was heard. She noticed how surprised people were by Alexander's approach, preferring to sit at the table as an equal rather than impose his authority. For her, it was a new way of seeing leadership in action, and she felt that she was finally part of something that could truly make a difference. While Julia helped to create a new communication channel between administration and employees, Marcus faced the challenge of revitalizing the IT team. His promotion put him in a position where he now had a say in decisions about technology investments and how Horizon Systems could be improved. "I never thought I'd have the chance to suggest changes like this, Alex." "I mean, Alexander," Marcus said, still getting used to the shift in dynamics between them during an informal conversation. "I think we're finally building something worthwhile here. Something that will last." Alexander smiled at Marcus's words. He knew that the technicians still faced challenges, especially in dealing with the resistance from some of the more senior team members who were still accustomed to the old leadership and reluctant to embrace the new proposals. "I know it's not easy, Marcus, but I trust your work. Keep listening to the team and showing that you're willing to help. Changes start small, but I know that, over time, they will make a difference." Despite the optimism of Julia and Marcus, not all employees embraced the changes right away. Many still remembered the tense environment that Carter and Melinda had created and feared that the changes might be temporary. Some believed that Alexander's friendly demeanor might just be a strategy to mask future layoffs. Others, used to a culture of fear and hierarchy, struggled to adapt to the more open and collaborative atmosphere. "Why should we trust a boss who started as a disguised newbie?" commented one of the older managers during a lunch with colleagues. "This is just a ploy to gain our trust before making changes that will only benefit him." These comments reached Alexander through rumors circulating in the halls, but he preferred to address them directly. Whenever he heard a comment like this, he would call a meeting with the team in question and openly discuss their concerns. Gradually, his transparency began to break down the resistance of some, but he knew that earning everyone's trust would take time. Julia and Marcus were instrumental in this transition process. Julia used her position to ensure that employees' ideas and suggestions reached Alexander. She organized internal forums where employees could freely discuss the changes they wanted to see in the company. These forums, initially met with skepticism, began to gain popularity as employees realized that their suggestions were truly being considered. "It's the first time I feel like I have a voice here," commented Lucas, the young analyst who had been humiliated by Carter weeks before. "I used to be afraid to speak up in meetings, but now I feel like the environment has changed." Julia smiled at Lucas's comment, feeling that her work in administration was starting to make a difference. She knew there was still a long way to go, but moments like that made her believe they were on the right path. Meanwhile, Marcus led his team in a server modernization project, taking the opportunity to train newer members in advanced programming techniques. He made sure to show that he wasn't there to command but to work alongside his team. "Here, let's solve this together," Marcus would say to one of the interns, while explaining a new script to optimize server performance. "No one here needs to do anything alone. We are a team, and each of you has something important to contribute." These small actions began to transform the environment at Horizon, showing that the cultural change was not just a speech but something reflected in daily life. One night, after a long day of meetings and adjustments to the company's new strategic plan, Alexander found himself once again in his office at the top of one of Velmor's buildings. The city's lights shone outside, reflecting in his thoughts as he watched the distant movement in the streets. He remembered the early days when he arrived at Horizon in disguise, facing Carter's disdainful looks, Melinda's venomous comments, but also finding the glimmer of hope in people like Julia and Marcus. He reflected on how, by taking on the perspective of an ordinary employee, he could understand the true dynamics of the company. "If I had come here as the new boss, I would never have known the essence of these people," he murmured to himself as he observed the city that never stopped. Appearances can be deceiving, but actions and character reveal who we truly are. For Alexander, the experience of disguising himself and seeing the company through the eyes of the employees showed him that behind the numbers and reports, there were stories of resilience, ambition, and even frustration, which, when heard, had the power to transform any environment. And he felt that Horizon was changing because these stories had finally found space to flourish. Julia, who had once been underestimated as a receptionist, now became a role model for new employees, showing that at Horizon, it didn't matter where someone started but rather where they could go. She organized internal events, like small informal breakfasts, where employees from different departments could share their ideas and experiences, promoting integration between teams and creating an environment where everyone felt valued. "You know, Marcus, when I look at where we are now, it's hard to believe it all started with that chaos with the server, remember?" Julia said during a coffee break, her eyes shining with enthusiasm. "I remember, and how we thought it would be the end for us here," Marcus replied, smiling as he recalled the tense moments. "But look at us now. I think it all became possible because someone saw beyond appearances." Julia nodded, and the two shared a knowing smile. They knew they had found an ally in Alexander, someone who recognized the value of quiet work, and they felt inspired to give their best each day. That same night, Alexander closed his laptop and took one last look at the lights of Velmor. He knew there was still a lot of work ahead, but Horizon was now a place where he believed real change was possible. And, above all, he knew he wasn't alone on this journey. Julia, Marcus, and so many others had found a new motivation to build something greater. A new beginning, Alexander thought as he turned off the lights in his office and headed for the elevator. For Horizon, for them, and maybe for myself too. The company that was once just another player in Velmor's competitive tech market had now become a symbol of how, with the right leadership and respect for people, any place could transform. And Alexander was ready to continue this story, knowing that with each new dawn, Horizon Systems was becoming a little closer to the future he envisioned. Time passed, and the transformation of Horizon Systems took root. Under Alexander Reed's leadership, the company became an example of how, When talent appreciation and respect are prioritized, the results go beyond what any financial report can show. Horizon had become a place where ideas flowed freely, where teamwork was at the core of everything, and where every employee felt that their contribution truly made a difference. With the changes implemented by Alexander, Horizon adopted a new work philosophy based on transparency and recognition of both individual and collective efforts. Weekly team meetings, once seen as a time of scrutiny, became a space where innovative ideas were welcomed, and employees felt safe to share their challenges and achievements. Julia, now in her leadership role in administration, played a key role in this process. She was a strong advocate for promoting personal development programs for employees, organizing workshops on time management, leadership, and even coaching sessions to help those who wanted to plan their careers. She realized that, for the first time, Horizon was a place where people felt they had a future. "You know, Alexander," Julia confided during one of their many coffee meetings. "I always dreamed of making a difference in a company, but I never thought I'd have that chance here. Thank you for trusting me and giving me the opportunity to grow." "The change you've brought, Julia, went far beyond what I expected," Alexander replied, smiling at the young woman he had once known as a receptionist. "You're proof that when someone is seen and valued, their potential becomes limitless." Meanwhile, Marcus became a respected mentor to the younger members of the IT team. He used his position not only to solve technical problems but also to encourage the professional growth of interns and newly hired analysts. Instead of simply delegating tasks, he taught the concepts behind the challenges they faced, creating an environment of continuous learning. "You know, Marcus, you seem like a different guy now," commented Lucas, the young analyst, as they worked together on a project to improve Horizon's internal systems. "Before, I thought I'd never have a real chance here, but now I feel like I'm part of something important." Marcus smiled, feeling that his own journey was reflecting in the new talents at the company. "The truth is, Lucas, the potential was always here. It just needed someone willing to see beyond the labels. And I think now we're all ready to make a difference." These moments made Marcus feel that he was truly helping to build something lasting. He knew that by investing in the development of young talent, he was contributing to a future where Horizon would be known not just for its products, but for the collaborative and innovative environment it fostered. However, while Julia and Marcus thrived in their new roles, Alexander faced his own moments of reflection. Sitting in his leather chair in his office at the top of Horizon's building, he reviewed performance reports. But this time, it wasn't just the numbers that interested him. He saw the impact of the new leadership philosophy in Julia and Marcus's daily victories, the growth of departments that had once been stagnant, and the lighter atmosphere that filled the company's hallways. Alexander recalled the early days when he was treated like just another newcomer, ignored by some and dismissed by others. These memories now made him smile, as each of them led him to discover the true protagonists of this journey. People who, even without grand titles, had the power to transform the environment around them. He knew that Horizon's success wasn't just about market strategies or technological investments, but about the people who formed the essence of the company. The true value of a company is not in the numbers it presents, but in the people who make it what it is, Alexander murmured to himself as he gazed at the distant, twinkling lights of Velmor. For Alexander, the experience of disguising himself and seeing the company through the eyes of its employees showed him that behind the numbers and reports were stories of resilience, ambition, and even frustration that, when listened to, had the power to transform any environment. And he felt that Horizon was changing because those stories had finally found a space to flourish. Horizon Systems' transformation did not go unnoticed in the market. The company began to attract new talent, professionals who sought an environment where they could be valued and where innovation was a part of everyday life. Horizon became an example in Velmor of how a positive work environment could be a competitive advantage, capable of attracting the best professionals and the most demanding clients. Alexander knew that his role was not just as a leader but as someone who inspired a new vision for the company. He realized that by giving Julia, Marcus, and so many others the opportunity to grow and develop, he was building a legacy that would endure even when he chose to pursue new paths. The story of Alexander Reed and the transformation of Horizon Systems became well known in Velmor, catching the attention of other entrepreneurs and leaders in the city. In a speech to young entrepreneurs, Alexander shared his journey of transformation at Horizon, explaining how disguising himself as Alex had helped him see the true potential of his company. "The greatest lesson I've learned is that the true value of a company can't be found solely in financial reports or market strategies," he said, looking out at the attentive audience. "It lies in the people who, day after day, make this company what it is. And to discover that, we need to be willing to listen and see beyond appearances." His story inspired other leaders to look at their own companies differently, creating a movement of transformation that extended beyond Horizon's walls. Alexander felt that by transforming the culture of a single company, he had planted seeds that could flourish in many other places. As the city's lights twinkled outside, Alexander closed his eyes for a moment, allowing himself to feel the serenity of knowing that in this company that was once just another acquisition, he had found something far more valuable: the opportunity to transform lives and create an environment where the character and dedication of each person were truly recognized. Julia and Marcus, now in positions of prominence, were living proof that when someone is seen beyond the position they hold, their true potential can finally emerge. They were ready to take Horizon forward, with the same vision of human value that Alexander had introduced. And so, the journey of Alex, the newcomer, and Alexander, the leader, merged into one. He had disguised himself to see the truth behind the faces and titles, and in the end, he had found the most valuable wealth of all: the certainty that when people are placed at the center of an organization, the fruits of that investment can transform any reality. With a final look at the stars over Velmor, Alexander smiled. Horizon Systems now reflected what he had always believed, that a company is, above all, a reflection of the people who make it up. And with that, he knew that his legacy there was only just beginning, ready to inspire a new generation of leaders who would value what truly matters. And as he left the building that night, alongside Julia and Marcus, Alexander felt that not only Horizon, but also he himself had found a new purpose. A purpose that would continue to guide every step of his journey, in Velmor and beyond. Did you enjoy the story? Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next episodes and discover how this, and other stories, are connected here in Velmor. Leave a like and comment to let me know what you think.